Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Appreciate you taking your precious lunch hour and choosing to spend it with me for a little while. And what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about human trafficking. What a pick-me-up to the middle of the week, right? Really, we've known about this. AJ and I have been just networking and communicating for some time. My mother-in-law, Laura Mullen, XL, connect us all to get this appointment. But I've got a really long heritage with Duke Energy. I called my dad, who's a Duke employee, and I said, well, let's think about this. I know a couple great-granddads, and the granddad was working for Duke. You know, where are we at if I added up all the Duke Energy years? So I tallied it up. 2 great-granddads, 1 granddad, my father, my mother-in-law, and then first year with my brother-in-law. That's 175 years of Duke Energy experience. So to the Duke employees, thank you. You've put a lot of food on my table and most of my college education. So really, in a way, you've been serving Justice Ministries this whole time and had no idea. But anyway, happy to be here. It really kind of feels like home to me just to be amongst Duke Energy folks. So today I'm going to just spend 45 minutes or something kind of going over what we do, how you can get involved, what the issue of sex trafficking even looks like, in Charlotte. And I really want to leave some time for questions because that's where we get the best, discussions. But I'll start off. Who here has heard of the issue of sex trafficking? Pretty much everyone. Let me get a volunteer to explain what you think it might be. In your words. Anybody brave and want to? Yes, ma'am, the black shirt.
It's the enslavement of an individual for somebody else's use, usually at the profit of one organization or a series of individuals, and it's rampant in Knoxville.
Fantastic response. The way she worded that didn't just cover sex trafficking, but it covered human trafficking as a whole. Worldwide, human trafficking is at highest rates, obviously, in world history. There are more slaves on the planet today than any other time in global history. Some statisticians are saying there's about 30 million worldwide. Of that, about 22% are made up of the sex industry in sex trafficking. The other 78% are forced labor, child soldiers, things like people being sold for their organs in the black market, mail order brides, this kind of stuff. So it's not all prostitution. But for here at Justice Ministries, we focus specifically on the issue of sex trafficking. I thought that was a really great definition. A short one you can remember is basically just the exploitation of the vulnerable, and generally with someone else's gain or profit. But I really, again, I thank y'all for being here to care about this issue. That's the first step in making a stance. But for us, Justice Ministries, how did we start? Well, I was a college student in 2010 at UNCW. Went to a conference called the Passion Conference. And it was a conference where they took on multiple issues, everything from human trafficking to the water crisis to kids without shoes, stuff like that. And at that conference, I learned that it was happening, and it was not only happening overseas, but it was happening in my city of Charlotte. The reality was there was a 12-year-old girl or a 13-year-old girl in my city being sold for sex multiple times a day. And as a Christian and as a man, I just couldn't sit on that. And I felt like God was calling me to get involved, and I felt like He was saying to serve this population. So as a student, I had no idea what that was going to look like. When I got back, I researched the issue as much as I could, wrote a thesis on it, and I tried to find and connect with any group that had the word trafficking in the title. And I found a few interesting things. I found that there was a lot of attention growing in the area of awareness. There were some plans for housing, but at the time there was only 100 bed spaces nationwide specified for victims of human trafficking. I also found it was extremely prevalent in the U.S. In some countries like Cambodia and Thailand, 25% of the customer base is American businessmen traveling overseas. And there is comfortably at risk 300,000 children at risk in the U.S. So the stats for how many victims are on U.S. soil is really all over the place. This is an interesting topic where you'll hear a lot of statistics, and it's really hard to back most of them up. I've heard everything from there's 100,000 victims to there's 1 million. So somewhere in there. But either way, I'm not okay with it, and it was too much for me. So as I continued to research the issue, I saw there was a great void, really, in this area of rescue. Law enforcement officials I met with said we were winning this fight at anywhere between 1% to 3% success. Just horrible numbers. And so I felt led that I needed to start a group to focus on the issue of rescue and the issue of facilitating housing. So that's what we did. I had no clue what that was going to look like. I probably paid taxes myself 1 year much less, applied for a 501c3 tax-exempt organization. But I connected with some law students and some people that helped me. We got our paperwork filed for free, and we got it back from the IRS in 1 month, which is a modern-day miracle for sure. So here I was, young guy. I'm married now. My wife's in the back. They're doing some videotaping. But at the time, a single guy with no money, no real resources, just this 501c3, and we're going to go fight trafficking. I had no idea what it was going to look like. But I continued to pray about it and research the issue and just try to find activity. My first step was I literally just Googled the word sex into Google Maps, see what pinged, see what came up in my city. And I saw, obviously, the strip clubs and erotic massage parlors and things like that. And I began to just drive around and check these areas out. And I saw that some of these establishments had back alley massage parlors where they were open at nighttime and ethnically based in their advertisement. I thought that was pretty bizarre and weird. As I began to research it more, I found that sex was clearly being sold in our city. So for a season, I just continued to collect tips and locations like this and pass that into law enforcement. And that was really all I was doing for the first 8 months or a year or so. And I really wasn't satisfied with that. I didn't feel like that was enough impact. I was wanting to see girls come out, but I didn't know how I was going to do that. Well, coming into 2012 or so, I heard about a group of women that were going into strip clubs and just bringing care packages and loving on these girls on a regular basis. That's pretty fascinating. So I connected with them and asked how I could serve them. And the big issue was, well, if we meet a girl who has need, we don't really have anything we can offer, And I saw the need there and just need for basic security when they're doing outreach efforts. So we worked together for a few months, and basically we got to a point in fall of 2012 where now I had some females on the ground that could kind of be the face with the young ladies at risk, and I had some funding and logistical operations set in place, and we decided let's offer a hotline number and just try to help these girls. We'd send in tips to police. We weren't really clear on what was being done and what wasn't being done, but we knew as the private sector, there's nothing wrong with us just offering a number, and if people need help, they can call it. So not knowing what we were getting into or what it was going to look like, in 2012, we offered a phone number for the first time and started distributing that number with our outreach techniques. Well, in 2012, by the end of the year, we had 10 young women that called us in some type of exploitation situation, and they needed assistance to get out of there and get to a safe place. So that was year one. When we first went in, we were so jacked up, like security cautious, and we thought, oh my gosh, there might be a guy with a machine gun over there. We really didn't know, but fortunately, and praise God, there was not much risk. We were a lot more like Uber drivers than a SWAT team. So we had great success just communicating with the girls, showing up, and literally getting them out. In the early days, we just worked with hotel chains, and that was our emergency housing. And we would, night one, get them set up in a hotel, do an assessment of their basic needs, and then figure out what their goals are. What are their plans? With clients we serve, you're really going to see them go one of three places. We'll either have a girl that we help get out, and she just wants to go back home. We get her out, we get her some clothes, we get her some food, and immediate medical attention, get her back to speed. A week later, she's saying, you know what, I have a friend or a loved one in Arizona. If you can help me get there, that would be great. That's all she wanted from us. Easy, we can do that all day. So we'll put her on a plane or a bus, help her get home, send her with our information, and she can always follow up. Other girls definitely want to go into some type of housing program, in which case we will facilitate that. The application process for some of those housing programs can be complicated, so we'll try to kind of help them through that. There's about 18 bed spaces in Charlotte we have access to, and you're not going to find a women's home that can take sex trafficking victims that we don't already know of. We've really had to stretch thin and network and meet everyone that's offering any kind of care. So if they qualify for a local bed space and they get accepted into that, then we'll get them placed. And for some of those bed spaces, we actually offer long-term case management ourselves when there's lacking case management. And then other than that, we've really had to stretch and increase our out-of-state partners. We've sent girls to California, all over. We've grown and really had to stretch to find bed space, and we've sent girls. So I told you in 2012 we had 10 clients, and this is kind of our routine. In 2013, we tripled. We had 30 clients. And then last year, we ended the year with 100 clients. So we've tripled every year just in our activity. Obviously, our process and our style has gotten better each time. We are a little more smooth about it. I pick a girl up on the way home from the grocery store nowadays. It's like whatever, But we just had this incredible rapid growth. And this year, being that it's only July 15th, we've already had 92 clients this year. So we're on pace to even double that again. So our main problem right now isn't connecting with girls and getting them out. Our main problem is the infrastructure to sustain the care and actually keep up this pace. When we first started, I thought, we'll do great to serve 12, maybe 20 girls a year, but I did not expect such high volume. The other thing that's happened in the past year and a half or so, we finally have kind of built rapport with law enforcement, so now they're utilizing us as well. So over the past year and a half, and they're actually reaching out to us as well and saying, hey, I've got this girl, can you guys help us out? That took a long time to build that trust, which it should have, because there's some people that start anti-trafficking groups and they're not prepared, and or they maybe don't always have the best intentions. So they've vetted us really well over a couple of years until they finally started using us. So we're very thankful for that relationship, and we try to protect that and make ourselves available anytime a law enforcement agency calls. We do everything we can to meet that need because we want to maintain that corridor of communication. But yeah, today that's kind of what our operation looks like. We're a very small team. We have 3 full-time employees and 1 part-time. That's it. We have 1 full-time case manager. I pay her about $2,000 a month, and I think she's our highest paid employee at this time. So my team is not in it for the money at all. They're in it because they love these girls. We just recently, if there's any Mountaineers out there, we had an App State grad just join us. She graduated college and chose to raise her own support to come on full-time with us as an admin personnel, which we desperately needed because I'm horrible at that stuff. But yeah, that's basically where we're at right now. Our process, again, it's the 4 R's, which you'll see on the sign. We reach out. Why do we reach out? Because this is not a population that's just going to call 911. Or just going to wait to be called. They may not even have easy access to a phone. Sometimes we've had to communicate to the girl through her pimp's phone, and that can be very careful communication. We have to reach out first. We have to relocate. Why do I say relocate? Because a lot of times we use the term rescue loosely. Well, the reality is I'm not really rescuing these girls. I'm just simply relocating. I'm helping them get out and get away. It's really up to what do they want out of this experience. And it's also, I believe, God's intervention to have real rescue. Third step is rehabilitation. As the gentleman from United Way said, we don't do the rehabilitation by ourselves. We have multiple partners across the city that we've networked with. There's probably 6 other anti-trafficking groups that we work with on a regular basis, and we kind of tag team situations to give the girl the best care. Oftentimes, it can be very sensitive and difficult, but we have to get to a point where we can put aside brands and egos and worry about the client at hand. So whoever takes credit for it, it doesn't matter, just as long as that girl's getting the proper care. So the rehabilitation effort is truly a collective role, and we do a lot of referrals in that area. The Rise Up portion is our case management services. Our case manager, I mentioned, her name is Amy Johnson. She runs the entire Rise Up program, which consists of everything from getting the girl connected with a therapist, drug rehabilitation if needed, educational opportunities, work placement, child care. We have so many babies that come into the mix with this. We'll have a young lady come out, she's pregnant. Makes sense. I mean, with the industry they're in. And now it's not just this client. It's actually 2 clients in one. So we got to figure out child care and basic needs, throw in baby showers, all that kind of stuff. Just logistically, there's a lot that goes into taking on a person in their crisis. And one way I just describe my job is this, simply, my job is to hang out in other people's crisis. Oftentimes when I'm seeing these girls, it's one of their worst days because it's gotten to a point where they've taken the risk to reach out to us because it's not easy. There's some risk associated with that. So when you're at a point, think about this. If you were at a point where you would call a stranger at 3 a.m. and just get in their van, leaving nothing behind when they have to confiscate your phone and take you to an unknown location, it's got to be a pretty low spot to be ready to do that. So yeah, that's basically what we're dealing with. So anyways, it's kind of a snapshot of what our process looks like and what our activity looks like. We have, like I said, clients we're working with for a week. We simply help them get out, and we get them placed or send them home. We also have clients we've worked with for 2 years that we're doing case management services every week, and we're still working with them to this day. So I know Duke is really safety-minded, so I wanted to speak to a few of our safety practices as well. On the back of our pamphlets, one of the pages, I actually commit a whole page to signs of a human trafficking victim and things to look for. I could rattle off a list right now, but you're going to forget all those and it won't do us any good. So basically, in the area of what to look for, this is a list approved by the Polaris Project, which is a nationally recognized organization. And basically, it's just common sense. A lot of it is not some secret code to track when looking at a possible human trafficking victim. It's obvious things. If someone seems super submissive, like they can't talk to you and someone's speaking for them, if there's obvious bruising and that kind of stuff, if they don't seem to know where they're at in their location, all these things are very clear signs that something's not right. And reality is, what I found is your gut is sometimes your best indicator. So don't misjudge that. If you see something and it doesn't seem right, don't be afraid to inquire, and don't be afraid to call that in even. It's really okay. But yeah, I'd encourage you to read over this list on our pamphlet as well. Now, I'm sure some of you are knowing, okay, Mark, this is great. Thank you for sharing about what to look for, what you're doing, and all this. It's wonderful. How do I help? How do I call somebody if I see something? There's basically 3 ways to share a tip or to share activity if you're suspicious of something. The first one is, as I mentioned, the national hotline through Polaris Project. That number is also on this pamphlet. It's the number 888-3737-888. Now, Polaris is not an investigative agency. They are a tip, more of a data collection agency. So you will be frustrated if you're calling them and you're wanting them to take action right now. They're based out of DC. They're not going to do anything about it in Charlotte. What they will do is collect the information and pass it along to law enforcement if they feel that it's a worthwhile situation. You can also reach out to us. We're local. We're on the ground. We basically on the daily are serving this 50-mile radius from Center City, Charlotte. And in terms of what we'll respond to, if we can get there in a day's drive, we'll try. The number you have on there is the 704-626-8027. That's our current hotline. We will be transitioning to a new hotline, which will be 980-458-AWAY, but we're upgrading that at a later date. But yeah, we will deploy a rapid relocation team only if we get some correspondence from the client. A lot of times I'll get tips from people saying, hey, I saw something suspicious. Can you go get this girl? Well, no, not if she doesn't give me permission to. I can't kidnap her. So I get that all the time. I saw something. You should go get her. I'm like, she would have to agree to that. But the issue with us, if you are talking to a young lady or meet someone that needs help, they will have to give some kind of nod for us to come out. Otherwise, we'll just be sitting in the parking lot and nothing's going to happen. The saddest thing I run into is occasionally I'll have a father or a mother call me saying, can you go get my kid? I know they're with this pimp. I know they're living this life, and I can't get them to come home. Can you go get them? And I'd love to say, yeah. But the reality is, if they're over 18, they have to want to leave. Now, for the minors, that's a different story. The parent can technically just go get them, then I'll help them with that. But if they're an adult, they have to want to come out. And that's the biggest, sometimes hard thing when you see a girl and you know what it is. And she thinks she's in love. She thinks it's a boyfriend. She thinks this is the man of her dreams. And I can see it coming a month away. And if she doesn't believe it, she doesn't believe it. And obviously, when we're doing outreach in the clubs or on the street, we're educating, trying to tell girls, hey, this is not a good thing. And some take your word for it, some don't. But that's one of the most heartbreaking things when you see a girl that you could reach, but she doesn't want to leave yet. That's really tough. And then last but not least, 911. I don't think people use 911 enough. It is there. It's always open. And they're happy to take your call. The difficulty is not having good enough information to launch a police report. So sometimes when we have tips that are maybe weaker, I actually will go and just look into it and see if I can collect some information to make a worthy tip that I can send in. But again, just with our time being stretched, I don't always have time to do that. But in short, don't be afraid to speak up. Charlotte is your city. It doesn't belong to the traffickers. There's not thousands of traffickers taking us over. Like, we are the majority here. And if we don't take a stand, if we don't speak up and say something, who are we looking to do that? So I would really encourage you to go with your gut, and if you see something, definitely stand up. Lastly, I'll talk about some ways you can get involved, and then I just want to open it up for questions for the rest of our time. We have 3 areas. When me and AJ were discussing this event, we talked about the idea of professional development teams, which I thought was really cool. Basically, again, when we're taking these girls on, we're needing to help them with every area of life, from child care to education to health care to work placement one day. But one of the biggest issues with work placement is a lot of our clients have an 8th grade or 10th grade education. So the first thing we do is obviously get a GED. For many of our clients, they've enrolled in community college and completed courses and are in that process right now. But the next step. Now, we can get girls jobs sometimes at a coffee shop where we know the guy, and occasionally at a Chick-fil-A. But if a girl has a criminal record and all these complications, getting work can be really tough, at least with the work that they're looking for. So the idea of us developing somewhat of a committee within our volunteers to be professional development folks, I thought that was a pretty cool idea. And again, I'm not in the corporate world. I've done this straight out of college, so I would welcome resume writers and builders and best practice interviews, that kind of stuff. It'd be neat to have some volunteers on call where we could say, hey, Susan here is getting ready to go in for an interview. Can you 3 do a session with her? that kind of stuff. I think those coaching opportunities would be fantastic. So the first step, if you're interested in something like that or being on call for that, would be just hop on our website and email the main email address, and there's a thing called Chrysalis training. Our Chrysalis training is basically our 101 training for anyone that's going to work hands-on with a victim. They have to complete that, and then they'll be certified to do so. So after you complete Chrysalis training, then you'll be on the list of certified volunteers. And then from there, those of you that are interested in this professional development area, we can continue that conversation. But the first step is getting certified, and then we can form a group that really could just more or less be on call. The challenge with us is we have high turnover with clients, and sometimes a girl will be with us for 6 months, and then she has to relocate to another place. And then, it's hard to keep track. It's not like all of our clients are with us for a really long time. But for those that are, I think it would be a great opportunity for them. Another area we talked about is the idea of go bags. Go bags are basically the backpacks we prepare and we have sitting in advance for when we get a call on the hotline. We've got bag mixtures of different size clothes, medium, small, large, whatever. And it has toiletry items, underwear, some gift cards for, food items or miscellaneous stuff, just kind of ready to go. So when we pick this girl up, many of the girls we get come to us with the clothes on their back. In fact, a few months ago we had a client that literally only had the hospital gown. That was it. So, we obviously had to go shopping first. But that is a really common thing. They're not coming with tons of luggage, if anything, a trash bag. So to arrive with a bag and some essentials really helps a lot. Now, I will say, this has been a need for us, but lately it's not a critical need. So I'm finding that preparing go bags has become something that people will do like that. I can get any church group or Girl Scout group to knock out 80 go bags for me. So from this group, I don't know if this is where I would encourage you to really devote a ton of attention. If it's something you really want to take on, great. But right now, we have more than we need. And sometimes we've gotten over donations because we have 230 clients to date. Well, once you get 1,000 toothbrushes, you're in pretty good shape. I mean, I don't really need a warehouse of toothbrushes. So when we're having trouble feeding the girl and clothing the girl and transporting the girl, like that all takes funds and manpower. And right now, that's the bigger priority for us. Which transitions me to one of my favorite parts for this entire day, the matching gift program at Duke Energy. Please do not disregard the impact your matching gift program can have. I speak to groups all the time. We speak to church groups, civic groups, schools. And it's very common for me, there's probably 50 people in here. It's common for me to sit in a group of 50 people and give my spiel. And on average, we'll leave with $300 and maybe 1 or 2 people that have decided to be monthly donors from there on out. That's it. Well, let's imagine for a minute. Let's say I went to a group of 50 people and everyone there decided to contribute at $30 a month from then on, okay? Well, that would increase our budget by $1,500. That'd be amazing. As I mentioned earlier, our case manager makes $2,000 a month. We only have 1. So another $1,500 would get us really close to hiring a second case manager. But in this room, with Duke employees, at that same rate of $30 a month, you guys would be at $2,250. So this room alone could basically hire a new JM employee, therefore increasing our team by 30%. So your $30 gift a month matched with Duke's matching program would result in a new hire for us. And at this point, with the infrastructure we're facing, that is truly, honestly, what we need. So please hear me in that if you really want to pack a punch in this fight against human trafficking, we are the only team that offers a hotline in this region. We are the only team that does groundwork and rapid relocation services. We're there. We're a small group. So to give us another team member would be extremely huge in this fight against human trafficking. And this group alone right here, by themselves, could employ a new JM employee. So just really think about that. The reason I mentioned $30, it's a really common ask for us. In our research, we found that $30 was the lowest rate that sex buyers paid for time with a victim. And that was about 15 minutes worth of time. So we figured if they can spend $30 to abuse them, we can do $30 to serve them and help them. But again, there's nothing magical about that. For some of you, $30 is a lot. Some of you, no big deal. Some can do $300, and I'd say do it. But even if you can do $5 a month, that's getting in the fight. The issue we've run into is, so far, and again, we're a young organization, about 70% of our gifts have been miscellaneous one-time gifts from speaking and fundraising and that kind of stuff. Only about 30% of our operation is recurring funds. Well, but with where we're at in this crazy growth of infrastructure, we need more manpower. And with that manpower, we can serve more women long term. Because a woman doesn't just need to be rescued. Rescued is huge. Side note, I've had some groups critique me because they think we'll try to rescue too many girls and not have a great plan. And I hear that. But when you're getting abused and raped every day, rescue is essential. You have to get them out. And even if I get them out, give them a week of services and that's it, that's something, you know? But for long-term success, you have to do the cost of rescue, but then the cost of long-term care, which includes all your travel, all your health care, all your child care, all your food, all your clothing, possibly schools, occasionally paying off some drug dealer that has it out for you. I mean, a lot of money goes into this. And really that's what we need for the long term, because these girls eat every month. It's not a one-time thing. And so anyways, not to beat it over your heads, but just really pray about it, think about it. Where a go bag is great. If we're going to go spend $25 on a go bag, what would it look like to do just 30 a month and have it matched? And we can hire a new employee, which would radically change our situation. Because really, all I'm really trying to do, and what I'm asking, is for you to help put me out of a job. I'm not your average nonprofit guy. I'm not trying to make a career out of this. I felt a call, and we're in a war. I see this more as a war situation than a job. There are times if I can't pay myself, I don't pay myself. The work is still there to be done. So the reality is, we're here to fight. We're here to fight this war called sex trafficking in Charlotte, and I'm really in it to win it. I hope to get to a point where my services are no longer needed in Charlotte, North Carolina. So yeah, I'd love to get put out of a job sooner than later. I can go do something else. But the reality is, there's always going to be this work, whether it's in another state, another country. We have more than enough work to do. But if you could, keep that in mind. When I'm asking for you money, I'm really trying to ask you to make me unemployed. That's really my goal with all of this. But again, I just tell you to pray about it, think about it, but just don't forget about it. It's easy. The reason I say recurring, I'd rather get $5, a $5 commitment per month than $100 one time today. Because $100, it's easy to give, then you forget about it and you move on. But I'm looking for people that are willing to dig in with this war and settle in for the long haul, because that's what we need. We need people that are going to go the long run with us on this. So I got tons of information, pamphlets, materials. I even have my financial report from 2014. If you're interested in that, please check us out. I'm happy to share how little we spend. But yeah, check us out. I can take any kind of donation, or if you want to set up for a recurring month donation right now, it's really easy. You just check the box to make it recurring. And you can actually do it on your smartphone. That may be easier if you choose to do that. But at this time, it is 12:40, and I want to use the rest of our time just for Q&A. So I'll open it back to you guys.
Mark, you spoke a moment ago about first acquaintance with this at Passion Conference, and I guess part of the overall End It movement that's actively engaged through Passion Conferences.
Right.
Everything you shared about the Charlotte experience today dealt with the rescue of young ladies, even though End It would say that basically this trafficking is about 2/3 women, 1/3 males, most of the males 10 to 13 years of age.
That's correct.
How do you see your mission expanding to try to cover that? How do you go about doing that, and how much when do you think that would occur? Because it sounds like that really you're trying to deal with 2/3 of the problem. I'm just trying to ask what are we doing about the other third?
Yeah, that's a great question, because in reality, we could take our anti-trafficking groups and divide them into like 8 categories. You got foreign nationals, you got domestic, you got over 18, you got under 18, you got male, you got female. And there's so many categories that really, to properly serve them, you need to kind of focus on one area for the most part. And so we've chosen to focus on primarily over 18 women. We've only had a few foreign national clients, not because they don't exist, it's just because we speak English and a lot of people we're communicating with speak English. So we desire to increase our efforts to reach foreign national clients. We desire to help get more minors out, because we have a lot of minor partners. We serve about 15 young women under 18 as well, and then the boys. That's a tough situation. We have a partner group in Greenville, North Carolina, called Restore One. They're under construction right now for what will be the first home for domestic males that are minors that are being sex trafficked in the entire country. The first home, just at this point. So that's crazy, and we're very close with them, so I work with them and whatnot. They've really been having to just strictly fundraise to get to this point. Out of my 232 clients, 2 have been male. It's a really, really tough area, and really a forgotten population. Even though we know that they're out there, the rings and the organizations that are selling boys are far more underground than the girl that's being traded on the corner. Also, I wanted to share that a lot of what we're doing, I'm not running into Russian mafia every day. I mean, a lot of what I'm doing is more the small-time thug who's working 4 to 6 girls, and he thinks he's big time, you know. So those guys are a little easier to take down. They're not as smart, and they don't have as much resources. So we deal with that a lot. But there is this other huge operation of large underground rings that we're trying to get at, but they're a lot more sophisticated and a lot harder to get into. So some areas I have a great urge to increase in is foreign nationals that are being sold in brothels and massage parlors, and the underground network of boys caught up in child pornography and that kind of thing. Crazy stuff to try to find, because it's really kind of in the dark web. So even if we're doing research, it's very tough to come across them. They're not on the www dots. They're on other weird wiki feed type stuff. Good question. Yeah. So we're with you on that. Yes, ma'am.
So what's some of the obstacles that you had to face when starting this whole thing?
Well, you know, in many ways, the journey was decently light. You know, in many ways, it was extremely difficult. You know, there are times I look back and I think, wow, this is amazing. We've grown as fast as we have. I've been blown away. But there's also been some tough times. A lot of unnecessary politics. Sometimes the hardest people are supposed to be your colleagues, your other, you know, service providers and this kind of stuff. That's been one that surprised me. But we've gone a long way with mending those bridges and whatnot. Financially, in one sense, I've been shocked we've raised what we've raised. But at the same time, seeing the projections of what we need, I think it's an issue we talk a lot about, but the funding isn't there. And I think it's something we really, if we get serious about it and it becomes the priority, we can make crazy impact on it. Yes, ma'am.
Where do you get your funding? Is it all private donors, or do you have other agencies,
Correct.
government, or otherwise?
Yeah, we are 100% private at this point. We have probably 200 consistent donors and about 10 churches that have gotten behind us. That is our main donor base at this time. I've applied for dozens of grants that were really solid applications that I lost to renovating a history museum and fixing a nature walk. So I've been blown away with that. A lot of times, and again, not that the grant situation is not good. For us, I think we're a little too radical for some of the grant writing. They want a grant for an educational program about human trafficking. They don't want a grant for extracting people that extract human trafficking victims. They're going, they can't get their minds around that sometimes, that we actually go get girls out. So when we're applying for funding for that, it's not really there. That's not part of the program. We don't qualify. You know, so we've tried to spin it and, you know, apply for programs and trainings and stuff. But we've gotten very minimal funding from any kind of grants. Just sometimes we don't fit what they're wanting us to be.
So you hear a lot of horror stories. Have you had any clients come back to tell you a success story?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, we have. And right now this year we've had 7 young ladies move into their own apartment that's in their own name. Their kids are there. It's their place. They'll call us if they're short on rent this month. They'll throw in $50, but for the most part, they're living pretty independently. And to me, it's not quite graduation, but that's pretty dang close. And so that to me is huge. Just seeing that success. We had one girl we worked with that got married last year. And really, honestly, for me, seeing all the healthy babies born that now aren't in that hotel room while it's going on, but they're with their mom and they're in their apartment. That is a huge victory right there. But yes, so we do have lots of successes. The negative is out of our clientele we work with, about a third of them we lose contact with and they go on their own way, and they don't choose to follow up with us. And then, but we have had many that have had great success and are still succeeding to this day.
Kind of spin off of what she was asking, and then you had just stated that probably a third of the women that you help, you don't get any further information on them. What about those that actually end up falling back into it, either by choice or just coming across the wrong person again?
It's pretty common, actually. Yeah, out of that third I was speaking of, that's what we see. When a girl breaks communication with us, and a lot of it's just the prepaid phone society, you know. So if you're having a throwaway phone and you choose to leave and toss your phone, I don't have a GPS tracker on you. I can't find you. And so those girls we lose contact with, what we normally do find is a couple months later, they'll call the hotline back, and we find them literally in almost the exact situation they started, which we understand. I've taken a lot of trainings and courses on this, and that's not that uncommon. You know, with alcoholics, sometimes they fall back into it 7, 8 times.
Do you help them?
Same idea. Yes.
Do you,
Oh, yeah.
do you help them again?
We'll go the rounds. Yes, ma'am. We've had some girls we've helped 3 different times that, you know, came out, we helped, left, fall back into it, called us again, we helped her get out. We might have made stricter rules the second round, and then left again, and then finally came back and is still with us today. So we have had those are frustrating, but the Lord really grew me in that area too. At first, when I saw some of that, I was just very irritated. You're wasting resources, you're wasting time. Like, are you kidding me? And God just really kind of put it on my heart and said, yeah, I've been walking with the Lord since I was 9 years old, but I still mess up on the day-to-day. But with me, when I screw up or do something I shouldn't, normally it's not as loud as their mistake. So who am I to be freaking out because they made a mistake? So we do the best we can to take them back in and just keep helping them. Because at the end of the day, all we really care about is that they want help. Even if you've screwed up, even if you made a bad call, even if it was a horrible decision, if you're sorry and you want help and you still want to change, well, that sounds good, you know, and we'll do that.
What are some of the reasons why they fall back into it? Is it because of they're scared, or does their trafficker eventually locate them and threaten them?
There's a thing called...
What's the main reason why those that go back to it, why do they? Have you been able to track that?
Yes, ma'am. Most of the, like I said, we're dealing with more small-time thugs. A lot of them have what I call the lover boy approach, which is where they court them like a boyfriend and then eventually flip on them, sell them. Sometimes we have short memories, you know, after our trauma has gone away. And we've seen that most commonly where even after the girl's gotten away, normally say give it a month and she's been in safe care, maybe she starts getting lonely because there was a part of her that truly loved this guy. You know, she did crazy things for him. And so she does have this attachment that psychologists call it the Stockholm Syndrome, where you feel a connection to your abuser. And that is very common, where this guy has manipulated her, isolated her, and abused her so much, at times it even affected the brainwaves in her, how she thinks and how she processes. And has grown such a deep connection to him that is rooted in, and oftentimes just crazy abuse, that she has an attachment that when she gets away from him enough, she starts thinking about the few good times where they went to McDonald's and they went to, you know, the movie. And that loneliness factor when she's in a house with a bunch of women might kick in and she says, maybe I'll Facebook. Okay? And then that's how it starts. It can be that easy. In the more gross side of it, sometimes we've had the pimps go as far, say they've impregnated the girl and produced the child, where they've gone after the baby in terms of custody and things like that. Completely taken her off guard. I know. It's insane. Fortunately, we've had some really, I forget her name, we had a judge that defended a girl so well. I was so impressed with our judicial system and the way this went down. This guy, basically, because she figured out what he had done. But yeah, I mean, just really bold manipulation tactics where they'll target their weak points, they'll target their child, they'll do whatever they can to draw them back out. Again, while we try to separate, get rid of the phone, confidentiality, so you don't even know where she is. And then if the girl's willing, and when she gets to a time where she would be willing to press charges, let's do that. I saw a hand up. Pink shirt?
So I'm curious, when you get that call, what are the factors, what process do you go through to assess that specific situation before you go, you know, what are things you have to consider before you go in and do the rescue?
Correct, yes sir. So basically, we all been excellent. I appreciate your time. And again, feel free to take information, sign up for our emails. If you want to make a donation and need help with that, just let me know. But I appreciate y'all and hope to catch up again soon. Take care.